Hello, everyone. The 2 chapters of Revelation we will discuss today can be very difficult to understand, and you may have many questions after hearing this video. If you do, please leave a comment, and I will answer those as best I can. In chapter 17, you are probably wondering about 2 things. What is Babylon, and who is the woman? I've done a lot of studying about this and will give you the opinion I reached. God speaks of Babylon the Great. You may be asking, is this the same Babylon God destroyed before? The answer is no. But let's go back there for a moment. The first Babylon is located in present-day Iraq, just 55 miles south of Baghdad. The ruins from the city are still visible today. It was a very commercial area on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. It contained many temples, and its hanging gardens was one of the 7 wonders of the world. It is the city to which God sent the Israelites in 605 BC due to their disobedience. Interestingly, Babylon is mentioned 287 times in the Bible, more than any city other than Jerusalem. The story of the original Babylon and the Tower of Babel is told in Genesis chapter 11. Its sin and evil are also discussed in Zechariah chapter 5, verses 5 to 11. The same sin and evil can be found also in the Babylon in chapter 17 of Revelation, only much worse. In chapter 17, God calls this place of sin Babylon the Great. People have various opinions on what or where this place is. Some say it represents the power of ancient Rome. Others contend it represents evil nations. Everywhere, all kinds of evil nations. Still others believe it represents the Roman Catholic Church. It is called Mystery Babylon in the Bible for a reason. God must intend it to be a mystery. So I'm not sure anyone has a totally true answer. But I think Babylon in this chapter is the city of activity of the Antichrist. Verse 15 says, all people, nations, and languages will be affected by this evil government, which is true of that under the Antichrist. It will be worldwide, a one-world government. In chapter 17, we get a glimpse of life under this regime. Verse 3 indicates blasphemy will abound. Verse 6 says Christians will be killed. Evil is at its center. Verse 7 tells us the Apostle John was astonished at what he saw. But the angel responds that the people will be even more astonished as the end comes in this Babylon. Moving on, now let's talk about the woman. Verse 9 speaks of the 7 heads as 7 hills on which the woman sits. Interestingly, Roman coins minted in 70 AD show a woman sitting on 7 hills. So we have to believe Rome has something to do with this woman. Verse 18 says, quote, the woman you saw is the great city that rules over kings of the earth, end quote. Who is it that rules over the kings of the earth? Is it Babylon and the Antichrist? Is it the Catholic Church? Its Pope is and always has been extremely powerful. And its headquarters are in Rome. Is that where Rome comes in? Pope John Paul II suggested a prayer gathering of Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, and others. How do you really think God feels about that? Pope Francis recently issued a decree that priests should bless same-sex marriages, and many denominational churches support homosexuality and even marry such couples, all of which God abhors. So, might the woman represent all churches, as some believe, or just the churches that are presently falling away from the Bible? And there are many of them. As I have said many, many times, since pastors and priests haven't read the whole Bible, they run churches according to the world rather than the Word. But again, verse 18 says this woman is a city. So might that city be Rome? Keep in mind, God calls it a mystery. One thing we know for sure, one day we will all know who this woman of chapter 17 represents, because we will know all. Finally, chapter 17 also mentions 10 kings. Most scholars believe these represent the European Union. That is yet to be seen, but it's important to keep in mind. Now let's go on to chapter 18. An angel announces that Babylon has fallen and says, quote, "It has become a home for demons and a haunt for every evil spirit, for all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries," end quote. To me, this says Babylon is clearly the whole earth as it is being run by the Antichrist. Sadly, I see this happening more and more every day around the world. Here in America, we see a president who has opened our borders for the clear purpose of getting votes needed to run a one world government, which the Bible said will happen. Many people are totally unaware and oblivious to that. Christians are being persecuted here, while hoodlums are running wild without prosecution of any kind. Is this a beginning? Chapter 18, verse 4 says to Christians, quote, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes," end quote. Verse 8 says, "One day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her." The result? The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, because no one buys their cargo anymore. Verse 14 says, quote, "All your riches and splendor have vanished, never to be recovered," end quote. Verse 19 and 20 say, "In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. Rejoice over her, O heaven. Rejoice, saints and apostles and prophets. God has judged her for the way she treated you," end quote. So, anyone who mistreated Christians will one day pay God's price for that. Continuing, "Then an angel picked up a boulder, threw it into the sea, and announced that Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again." All of this is the end of the regime of the Antichrist, the one who looked so promising to so many, one who did not know the Bible and whose eyes were thus blinded. It's the one who supplied the mark so people could live like kings and queens, while God's people who refused the mark could neither buy nor sell and starve to death. But never forget this: God does not forget his people, not ever. Thanks for listening. Satan's deceit of the world has already begun. Christians are supporting what God abhors and think nothing of it. That would not have happened years ago. A president claims to be a Christian and lies continually for his own benefit. But God is aware. He has a plan, and he has informed us of that plan. I pray you are listening and preparing. Here's the very best news. The end of the horrors of Revelation will be the beginning of our eternity with God. To God be the glory. See you Thursday.